Eric. The name was shouted with a mix of anger and disbelief as a tablet was slammed onto the heavy oak conference table. Sarah pointed an accusatory finger at the photograph displayed on the screen, her teeth clenched in frustration. "You really have a bright future ahead of you, don't you?" she snapped. Eric followed Sarah's gaze, looking down at the high-resolution image. It showed two men walking side by side in a supermarket. One was pushing a cart, while the other had his head turned, speaking softly. Although they weren't holding hands or displaying overt affection, the domestic intimacy of buying groceries together was undeniable. It left plenty of room for the public's imagination to run wild. What made it worse was that everyone in the room knew this wasn't the only photo. A series of subsequent shots clearly showed the two men entering the same gated community, walking into the same house, and not emerging until the following morning. Eric was a horror film actor, often referred to as the resident ghost for the famous director, Miller. From zombies to drowned spirits, from hanged men to headless specters, his on-screen deaths were as varied as they were gruesome. Because of this niche, despite having been in the industry for 6 years, his face was rarely recognized without heavy special effects makeup. If his name was mentioned, people might say, "Oh, the guy who plays the ghosts." Even his fans struggled to recognize him on the street in casual clothes. How could such an obscure artist be targeted by the paparazzi? Eric realized the truth in a heartbeat. The target wasn't him. It was his legal partner, the rising star of the IT industry, Anthony. The media had likely failed to uncover Eric's identity as an actor and had instead labeled him as some young sugar baby being supported by a wealthy tech entrepreneur. Facing Sarah's gaze, which looked ready to bite someone, Eric smiled helplessly. "Sarah, do you know anyone at this media outlet?" Sarah was Eric's agent and had been with him since his debut 6 years ago. Back then, when director Miller brought Eric into the entertainment industry, Sarah was just a newcomer who had recently transitioned from assistant to agent. Eric had trusted her immediately, signing with her as her first artist. Over the years, while Eric remained a B-list actor, Sarah had cultivated several popular stars and become a power player in the agency. Yet, she valued loyalty. No matter how stagnant Eric's career seemed, she treated him better than anyone else. Hearing Eric's question, Sarah calmed down slightly. She thought for a moment before replying. "This is an online tabloid. They usually focus on business tycoons and new money rather than entertainment celebrities. I do have a few contacts there. I didn't expect you to be photographed. It was careless. If you want, I can contact them. We could use this opportunity to disclose your marriage to Anthony. I'll write the press release myself. It would resolve the rumors about you being a kept man and might even boost your popularity." Eric was stunned. He quickly shook his head. "No, Sarah, you misunderstood. I meant, if you know someone there, could you ask them to send me the high-resolution copies of the photos? I think they actually look quite nice. Anthony and we haven't taken a photo together in a long time." If homicide weren't illegal, Sarah looked as though she might have opened Eric's head right there to see what was wrong with his brain. She suppressed her rising blood pressure and shouted, "Eric, are you stupid? Do you know how serious this is? If a popular idol has a scandal, fans might forgive them. But for someone like you, who isn't even famous yet, a scandal like this basically means retirement. Do you understand?" "I know," Eric said softly. He poured a glass of water for Sarah and patted her back gently to calm her down. "But I entered the industry originally to make money to support Anthony's business. Now his company is on the right track. He doesn't need my investment anymore. It doesn't really matter if I get roles or not." Eric smiled again, his eyes curving into crescents, revealing deep dimples that made him look far younger than his 30 years. "You know how hard it was for me to get that new drama for you." Sarah paced the conference room. "Even though you're only the third male lead, it's a face-showing role. And now you tell me it's not important?" "Eric, I'm not trying to scare you. The contract states that if there is any negative news during filming, they have the right to terminate you immediately." "I'm sorry, Sarah. I know you've worried about me," Eric said, his voice dropping. "But Anthony and I agreed a long time ago not to expose our relationship." "Oh, of course he doesn't want it exposed," Sarah scoffed. "He's the new darling of the business world, rich and handsome. Do you know how many women dream of marrying him? He built that massive company out of his own pocket without venture capital. Now that it's profitable, Revealing he's gay and married would only complicate things for him. Sarah took a deep breath before continuing, her voice softening but still stern. But have you thought about yourself? You've used all your earnings to support his business. You have no savings. If you lose your career, are you just going to stay home and cook for him every day? Even if you're willing, would Anthony want a man who does nothing but housework? If you really didn't care, why did you beg me to find you a transformation role recently? They had worked together for 6 years. Sarah knew Eric better than almost anyone. She knew his calm exterior was a mask. Eric was turning 30, yet he looked 24. He was tall, handsome, and devoted. For years, he only took roles from director Miller to save money for Anthony. He spent his free time studying recipes rather than chasing fame. It was only recently, when Anthony's company, Apex Tech, finally broke through and became an industry titan, that Eric had asked Sarah for a change. He had felt a crisis, a fear that he could no longer keep up with his lover's growth. But now, facing this scandal, Eric seemed ready to give up. "Sarah, stop talking," Eric said, his smile straining. He took a deep breath. "At least, don't say it right now." Sarah looked at him, confused, until she glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just past midnight. "You," Sarah started, then paused. Seeing the look in Eric's eyes, she sighed and forced a smile. "Happy birthday, Little Apple. I guess I'm the first one to say it to you this year." Little Apple was Eric's nickname. He had grown up in an orphanage, found on the doorstep with cheeks as red as apples. Anthony used the name occasionally. Hearing the greeting, Eric subconsciously checked his phone. His chat with Anthony was still silent, the last message sent at 8 in the evening. Anthony had said the company had an important product launch the next day, and everyone was pulling an all-nighter. Eric locked the screen and joked, "See? There is no everlasting love. It's better to have Sarah, who is actually nice to me." Sarah had seen the empty screen. She stood up. "Okay, let's go. I'll drive you home. Think about how to solve this, and tell me your plans later." Driving him home, Sarah felt a wave of guilt. She had been so angry she forgot it was his 30th birthday. She was also shocked that Anthony had forgotten. Even though she disliked Anthony's recent detachment, she had to admit he used to be incredibly good to Eric. When Eric first entered the industry, same-sex marriage had just been legalized. They had been the first to marry. Back then, they were inseparable. Anthony would send soup to the set if Eric coughed once. Eric bought Anthony a car with his first paycheck. It was the kind of love people wrote novels about. But gradually, Anthony stopped visiting the set. Eric stopped mentioning him. Yet, every year on Eric's birthday, no matter how busy Anthony was, he would be the first to call. Until this year. "Sarah?" Eric said suddenly, breaking the silence in the car. "Can you lend me some money?" "Huh?" Sarah blinked. "What for?" "How much?" $10,000. "I don't have work for a few days, and I want to go out for a walk to relax." "You can't even come up with 10,000? Sarah was shocked. Eric lived frugally. He should have savings. But she swallowed her judgment. "Okay, when do you need it?" "The sooner the better," Eric whispered. "And please, don't tell Anthony in advance." "I won't. The big boss probably deleted my number anyway," Sarah scoffed. "I'll transfer it. Be safe." Eric nodded, curling into the back seat. He didn't tell Sarah that he already had visas ready. He had planned a trip for both of them, a belated honeymoon to celebrate their birthdays, which were only a month apart. He had hoped to repair their cooling relationship. But now, on his birthday, the internet was calling him a sugar baby, Anthony was ignoring him, and his career was imploding. Eric felt tired. He wanted to escape. When he got home, the house was empty. He packed a suitcase quickly. He booked a regular economy ticket to Southeast Asia because the specials were sold out. He lay on the bed, feeling the damp cold of the empty house, and set an alarm. He thought he would have insomnia, but he fell asleep instantly, exhausted by the emotional roller coaster. The next morning, thanks to his skills with makeup, Eric disguised himself to avoid the reporters camped outside his community. He boarded the plane and took one last look at his phone. Still no message from Anthony. He turned off the phone, removed the SIM card, and put it in his wallet. The first stop was Malaysia. Eric bought a local SIM card, but didn't open any social media apps. He communicated in basic English and stayed in a modest bed and breakfast. He traveled for 10 days. Kuala Lumpur, Semporna, Malacca. He got a diving certificate he didn't need. He tried to stop thinking about Anthony, but the silence was deafening. He hadn't gone 10 days without hearing Anthony's voice in 9 years. He realized he needed to get used to it. The 7-year itch was real. In Singapore, he dreamed of the Anthony from 9 years ago. They had met at a restaurant where they both worked part-time. Eric was 21, Anthony 19. Eric was an orphan. Anthony had just lost his parents in a car accident. They bonded at a bus stop, sharing books and cheap sodas. They fell in love naturally, without struggle. Eric supported Anthony through college, working translation jobs while Anthony studied computer science. Anthony learned to cook because he wanted Eric to have hot meals after late shifts. Anthony proposed on his graduation day with rings he bought using prize money from a coding competition. Waking up in a hotel room in Singapore, Eric looked at the simple platinum ring on his finger. How had they drifted so far? On the 20th day of his trip, Eric began to reflect on their marriage honestly. There was no infidelity. The problem was neglect. Anthony had become a workaholic, sleeping at the office. Eric, trying to be the perfect supportive partner, never complained. He never told Anthony when he was sick or lonely. He had cultivated an independence that had become a wall between them. He realized that independence was a defense mechanism. He wanted to be relied upon, but he also desperately wanted to rely on someone. On the 30th day, Eric had an epiphany. The worst outcome was being alone, which he was doing right now. Why hide? He wanted to see Anthony. He missed him. He bought the next flight home. He arrived just before midnight. As the clock struck 12, it officially became Anthony's 20th birthday. The apartment was dark. Eric smelled tobacco and alcohol immediately. He flipped the switch. The living room was a disaster. Overflowing ashtrays, takeout boxes, empty wine bottles. And there was Anthony, passed out on the sofa, looking haggard and thin. Eric felt a pang of overwhelming regret. He walked over, took off Anthony's shoes, and covered him with a quilt. Then, he went to the kitchen. Anthony woke up to a familiar scent, eggs and cream baking. It was the smell of the honey cheesecake Eric baked him every year. Anthony opened his eyes, shielding them from the light. He was sure he was dreaming. He had lost his little apple a month ago. He stared through the frosted glass of the kitchen door at the shadowy figure moving inside. Anthony had known for months that their marriage was in trouble. They had nothing to say to each other anymore. He had planned to fix it after the product launch. He wanted to surprise Eric with the news that the company was finally stable. But on the day of the launch, a reporter asked about the scandal. Anthony had been stunned. He halted the press conference to check the news, seeing the insults hurled at Eric. When he called Eric, the phone was off. When he called Sarah, she simply said, "Eric is gone." Anthony had returned to the stage and revealed the truth. Apex Tech was built on Eric's money. Eric was the owner. It was his 30th birthday gift to Eric, a public confession and financial security. But Eric wasn't there to hear it. For a month, Anthony had lived in a haze of regret. He realized Eric didn't want money or status. He wanted a husband. The kitchen door slid open. Eric walked out holding a bowl. "Why did you drink so much?" Eric asked softly. "I made porridge. Rest your stomach first. We can eat the cake tomorrow." Anthony stared. This dream was too real. He reached out, pulled Eric into his arms, and kissed him roughly, desperately. Eric struggled, surprised. Anthony froze. "It hurts. This isn't a dream." Tears instantly welled in Anthony's eyes. "Eric, I'm sorry, Anthony," Eric said, wiping the tears from the younger man's face. "I just didn't know what to do, so I went for a walk. I'm sorry. Don't leave me." Anthony sobbed, burying his face in Eric's shoulder. "I know I was wrong. Don't leave me." "I won't," Eric whispered, kissing his salty lips. "Happy birthday, Orange. You coming back is the best gift." Anthony clung to him like a lost child finding his home. "Are you hungry?" Eric asked. "I'm not hungry when I see you." "But I am," Eric smiled. "I haven't eaten properly." They shared the porridge, sitting close. Afterward, Anthony insisted on a shower together. It had been years since they had been this intimate. In the warm water, Anthony held him tight. "Little apple," Anthony said seriously. "No matter what happens, you will always be the most attractive person in the world to me. My hair stands up just looking at you." Eric blushed, realizing Anthony had seen the nasty comments online about his looks. Later, in bed, Anthony dried Eric's hair. Eric turned on his phone for the first time in a month. It flooded with notifications. Missed calls from Anthony, Sarah, and Director Miller. Don't look at social media, Anthony warned, hugging him from behind. People are vicious. I don't care about them, Eric said. I'm back. I promise, I won't leave so willfully again. If I make you unhappy, scold me, Anthony said. But always come back. They fell asleep in each other's arms, the silence between them finally comfortable again. Eric woke up feeling heavy. His head throbbed. Anthony was already awake, holding an ear thermometer. You have a fever. 39 degrees. We have to go to the hospital. It's just a cold, Eric mumbled. I'm taking you, Anthony insisted. He dressed Eric and drove him to the ER. The doctor asked routine questions. Have you been abroad recently? I just came back from Southeast Asia, Eric replied. The doctor's expression shifted. There's been a dengue fever outbreak there. We need to run tests and isolate you in the infectious disease ward just in case. Anthony panicked. Isolate? No, I'm staying with him. Despite the protocol, Anthony managed to stay. As they were moved to the ward, a nurse recognized them. You're the star from the news, she exclaimed. And you're Mr. Shao. My name is Eric. Eric corrected gently. And yes, this is Anthony. Please keep this secret for us. The nurse, charmed by their obvious affection, agreed. In the ward, Anthony refused to leave Eric's side. He checked his temperature constantly. The nurse said netizens are making up stories about us. Eric laughed weakly, scrolling through his phone despite Anthony's protests. They think we're breaking up, and I'm using a fake illness to keep you. Boring people, Anthony grumbled. You are the sweetest apple in the world. Only children think their own things are the best, Eric teased. Then I'm a child, Anthony said stubbornly. The nurse entered to set up a mosquito coil. She smirked at them. Moments later, Anthony's phone buzzed. He had posted on his verified account. Asterisk Anthony Shao. Only I know how wonderful you are. Hurry up and come home with me. Asterisk below, it was a picture of their marriage certificate, dated 7 years ago. Why bother explaining? Eric sighed, smiling. I want the world to know I'm proud of you, Anthony said. Eric reposted it with a caption. Okay, hubby. It was the first time he had called him that publicly. Anthony beamed. The fever broke the next morning. It wasn't dengue, just severe exhaustion and flu. Sarah arrived at the hospital, furious at first, then relieved. She brought news. Eric's low-budget monster movie was about to stream, and she had secured him a role in a new high-profile drama, The Painter. The filming is in Beijing, Sarah said. You need to join the cast on Monday. Eric hesitated, looking at Anthony. He didn't want to leave him so soon. Go, Anthony said later, peeling an orange for him. I'm coming with you. You have a company to run, Eric argued. I have managers for that. I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm going to be your assistant. Anthony grinned. I'm cheap. I can carry bags and warm your bed. You're hired, Eric laughed. On Monday, they arrived at the set. The crew was buzzing with gossip. The female lead was friendly, but the second female lead, a wealthy socialite named Tiffany, was hostile. She was the daughter of Richard, a venture capitalist who had tried to invest in Anthony's company. Tiffany recognized Anthony immediately. Mr. Shao, what are you doing here? I'm Eric's assistant, Anthony said coldly, standing close to Eric. Tiffany's eyes narrowed. She had hoped to seduce Anthony, believing the rumors that his marriage was a sham. Seeing his devotion to Eric infuriated her. For 2 weeks, things were peaceful. Anthony was the perfect assistant, fetching water and glaring at anyone who disrespected Eric. Then came the conflict. Eric and Tiffany had a scene together. Tiffany kept messing up, clearly distracted. During the break, the director asked Eric to help her rehearse. In the dressing room, Tiffany dropped the act. Anthony can't keep acting like this forever, she sneered. He'll get tired of you. A horror actor? Do you scare yourself when you look in the mirror? Eric stiffened. He was used to insults, but hearing them from a colleague stung. He turned to leave. Where are you going? Tiffany taunted. Running away to cry? Suddenly, the door burst open. Anthony stood there, his eyes burning with rage. Beside him was Jen, Eric's martial artist assistant. Can you fight? Anthony asked Jen calmly. Jen didn't hesitate. She rushed in. Tiffany screamed as Jen pinned her down. It wasn't a brutal beating, but it was humiliating and effective. Jen, Eric shouted, trying to intervene. Anthony held him back. Let her learn a lesson. She insulted you. The commotion drew the crew. The producer arrived, horrified. Tiffany, disheveled and crying, threatened to sue. "I'll pay for her medical bills," Anthony announced to the room, his voice ice cold. "But she will apologize to Eric for what she said." "He's crazy," the producer whispered. Anthony took Eric's hand and led him away. "We're leaving." Back at the hotel, Anthony was still fuming. "I don't care about the consequences. No one insults my husband. Her father is Richard," Eric worried. "He could hurt your business." "Let him try," Anthony said darkly. Apex Tech isn't a startup anymore. That evening, the internet exploded. Tiffany posted a tearful video claiming she was beaten by Eric's assistant for no reason. Her fans attacked Eric online. Eric tried to ignore it, but the hate was overwhelming. Anthony took his phone away. "Trust me." Anthony made a call. Released the audio. Half an hour later, a recording surfaced. It was from Tiffany's own abused assistant, who had secretly recorded the dressing room encounter. The audio clearly heard Tiffany's vicious insults and her mockery of Eric's career. Simultaneously, Anthony released a recording of a call with Richard, Tiffany's father. "Richard, my daughter likes you. You should know what's good for your business. A suitable marriage helps more than love. Anthony. Nothing is more important than Eric." The narrative flipped instantly. Tiffany was exposed as a homewrecker and a bully. Public opinion swung violently in Eric's favor. The next day, the producer called. Richard had pulled his funding. The movie was in jeopardy. "How much is the gap?" Anthony asked over the phone. He listened, then nodded. "I'll cover it. Apex Tech will produce the film." He hung up and turned to a stunned Eric. "You're investing?" Eric gasped. "That's millions. I made that money for you," Anthony said simply. "Consider it a gift." A year later, Eric's horror movie had become a cult classic. His role in The Painter won him critical acclaim. He was no longer the ghost actor, he was a star. On their 8th wedding anniversary, Anthony took Eric on a world tour. A video of Anthony surfaced from a financial forum. The host asked, "Mr. Shao, what motivated you to build such a successful empire?" Anthony looked directly into the camera. "I wanted to make money so my lover could do whatever he wanted. If he wants to act, I'll buy the studio. If he wants to travel, I'll buy the plane. I just want him to be free." The camera panned to Eric in the front row, blushing furiously. The host invited Eric on stage. "What is the secret to your marriage?" Eric took the microphone, looking at Anthony with deep affection. "There is no secret," Eric said softly. "It's not about grand gestures. It's about finding the person who makes you want to come home. It's about realizing that running away doesn't solve loneliness, but holding hands does. We aren't perfect. We lost our way for a while, but we found each other again." He squeezed Anthony's hand. "And," Anthony added, leaning into the mic with a grin, "it helps that he makes the best cheesecake in the world." The audience erupted in laughter and applause. Eric shook his head, smiling, knowing that for the rest of his life, he would never walk alone again.